Welcome to the Borough of Rumson's Affordable Housing webinar. My name is Tom Rogers, and I'm the borough's administrator and municipal clerk. Tonight, we invited our borough planner, Kendra Lely, to conduct a webinar about affordable housing here in the Borough of Rumson. Kendra will also try to answer your questions at the end of her presentation. As an attendee, you can submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. To ask a question, simply select the Q&A button to open the Q&A window. Please type your question into the Q&A dialog box and select Send. You may enter your questions as you think of them throughout the presentation. Kendra will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. At this time, I will turn it over to Kendra Lely to get started. Kendra, the screen is yours.
Thanks, Tom. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate your attendance at this informational webinar on Rumson's Affordable Housing Program. My goal tonight is to cover a couple of different topics. The first is that we want to be able to explain the overall affordable housing program for the borough, talk a bit about the past compliance efforts, exactly what is affordable housing and who qualifies for affordable housing, who lives in affordable housing, what the current compliance plan is. That would be the first section of the webinar. The second would be a little bit of a dive into the proposed ordinances that will be implemented as part of the affordable housing program. And then we're going to talk about briefly next steps. And then certainly the main reason why we're here tonight is to answer your questions as you may have them on these specific ordinances. So it's important to realize that the town has been compliant with affordable housing over the past 25 years. And that really started with adopting affordable housing plans, addressing what is known as the state's required affordable housing obligation. And that's been since 1995. Prior to 2015, Rumson submitted their affordable housing plans to COA, which is also known as the Council on Affordable Housing. And COA was actively reviewing and mediating the plans that were submitted to them pretty much for the past 10 to 20 years. And while under review, I think one of the things that's really most important is that the borough produced affordable housing units and satisfied their past affordable housing obligation. Since 2015, there's been a change in the review of these affordable housing plans. Instead of the Council on Affordable Housing, which is a state agency or was a state agency, it is now under court review. Not only for understanding what the obligation is and assigning an obligation to the municipality, but also reviewing the affordable housing plans and receiving court approval of such plans. Rumson's affordable housing obligation is broken up into really two components. Even though you see three circles here, it's broken up in between rehab, or what I would also call existing home improvement program, and then the two below that, which says prior round and third round, which is also known as the new construction obligation. So those are really combined into one number. The new construction obligation is then broken down further into two additional subsections known as RDP, or realistic development potential, and unmet need, which is that bigger orange bubble that you see to the left of the screen. Quickly, the rehab obligation, which we're really not going through tonight, but is certainly part of the affordable housing plan, is an account of units, and it's really based upon census data as to how many units within the municipality. It's an approximation that have low and moderate income families currently living in them, and there is a major system that needs to be improved, like a plumbing issue or electrical issue or structural or new roof or windows, and that somebody needs money to help to improve that major system. The rehab program provides a subsidy of $10,000 to a qualified low and moderate income household in exchange for providing that money, which comes from the trust fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that the town has. There's a 10-year deed restriction that's placed on that unit to ensure that low and moderate income families continue to live in that unit. So that's the rehab program. The rehab program, while the number is 29, it is not necessarily something that actually has to be met, meaning that if there isn't a demand for this program and there isn't low and moderate income families that would want to take advantage of it, we just have to show that we have the money allocated for this particular program. So that's the rehabilitation program. The new construction number that you see is 268 plus 335 for a total of 603. That means that the town is responsible on paper for 603 affordable housing units. Many of you may ask, well, how is that possible? We don't have the land to be able to support something like that. And the COA regulations allow for something called a vacant land adjustment. And that's based upon the fact that you don't have the vacant land to support such a large number. You get that adjusted down to what's known as the RDP, which you see in the larger orange bubble, also known as the realistic development potential, really what could be developed given the vacant land that is in the municipality or lands that would be redeveloped within the municipality. Based upon review of our vacant land analysis by the court, that number is 51. That number is then subtracted from the total, which then gives you a 552 unmet need obligation. Unmet need, that 552 number is a number that we may never achieve, but there are mechanisms that need to be put in place, which we'll talk about tonight, to show that there are incentives to at least move towards that number. The 51 RDP, realistic development potential, that's the real number that we have to put in place specific mechanisms that will show that we can achieve 51 affordable housing units before 2025, which is the end of the compliance period, the third round compliance period. So who qualifies for affordable housing? What you see here is 2020 regional median income limits for Mercer, Monmouth, and Ocean counties. You will notice that there is a median income row, moderate, low, and very low. The moderate, low, and very low rows are what's considered affordable housing. The median is there just as reference because the moderate, low, and very low are a percentage of the median. So you can see for yourself, folks that fall into these categories. I wanted to just kind of give you an idea based upon 2019 state information that you could expect folks like entry-level elementary school teachers, people working at your local shops and restaurants, public employees like clerical and public work staff, to fall within that moderate to low to potentially very low income level. So that's that. I just want to give you a sense of what that maximum household income is and where those thresholds lie. So how does that then turn into sales prices and rents, affordable housing? What exactly are we talking about when we talk about the types of units? So I'll just pick out a 2-bedroom unit on the top piece of this slide, which is affordable home sales prices. These are for low to moderate income households. A 2-bedroom would be priced anywhere between $215,000 to $264,000. $215,000 for a low income family, $264,000 for a moderate income family. With regards to affordable rents, same 2-bedroom. If it's being rented for a very low income family, it would be about $700 a month. For a moderate income family, it would go up to about $1,400 a month. So this just gives you a sense of the type of housing that is considered to be affordable. The Rumson's affordable housing plan is broken into, and I'm just not talking about rehab right now because we already dealt with that, but it's divided into 2 components: your RDP of 51 and your unmet need of 552. This slide displays those 2 subsections, which is also, as I indicated, is known as the new construction obligation. And then in the boxes that correspond with each of those that you can correlate with the arrow is the mechanisms that will be put into place to achieve the different subsections, the RDP and the unmet need. The borough is utilizing two mechanisms to address the RDP: zoning and market to affordable program. I'm going to talk about zoning in a minute, but the market to affordable program is also known as a buy down program. The borough uses affordable housing trust fund money to make a market rate house affordable to a low and moderate income family by purchasing it at the market rate cost and then selling it at the affordable cost. So it's a subsidy that the municipality provides to make your existing housing stock more affordable. That's one component of how we're meeting the RDP. The main component that you typically see as meeting the RDP or the new construction obligation is zoning. And zoning is the way that, in my opinion, well, not in my opinion, it's the way that affordable housing becomes realistic, that a court looks at our plan and says, you've implemented the zoning. So yes, now you've provided an opportunity for affordable housing to occur within your municipality. And ordinances are really just mechanisms to implement the master plan. And the master plan is your affordable housing plan. Your affordable housing plan, which is known as the housing element and fair share plan, was adopted by the planning board this past Monday night. Ordinances are what I consider to be the teeth that implement and effectuate the affordable housing plan. Ordinances, for those that may not be familiar with zoning ordinances, they go through a three-step process. And the first is an introduction. These ordinances were introduced on November 17th at the Borough Council meeting. The second is specifically when it relates to zoning and land use, is a planning board consistency review, which the planning board reviewed these zoning ordinances this past Monday on the December 7th. And then there will be a final reading and public hearing on December 15th at the Borough Council meeting. So it's important. I want to make sure everybody's clear that this webinar is really just an information session. It is not the public hearing. We really wanted you wanted to give you as much information as possible and answer your questions, but this is not the official hearing. That is on December 15th at 4:30, which is next Tuesday at the Borough Council meeting. So that's just something that needs to be clear. We are really here just to provide information and then be able to answer any questions. Now getting into the ordinance details, one of the things that we wanted to kind of go through is really specifically the ordinances that most of you are probably calling in to find out about because you received a letter in the mail and notice. This is the proposed zoning map that can be found on the borough's website. It's on the affordable housing page. The majority of the new zoning is concentrated in what I like to call the downtown areas of the municipality of the borough. And in these areas, similar to kind of this north section here, as well as this, what I call the central section, it's important that when we looked at rezoning pieces or providing overlay zoning pieces, that these areas where potentially affordable housing would occur has pedestrian access to shops and services, public transportation, parks and schools, and where the existing pattern development is similar in residential density that's required for affordable housing. So I will have, this is just an overview, but I wanted to give you a sense of the overall zoning map. This section here, again, was what I'm calling the North River Road downtown area. There's mostly overlay districts that are being proposed or implemented into this area. The second area is what I call the central business district, and this is Avenue of Two Rivers, Ridge Road and River Road. And mostly occurring in here is also overlay districts, as well as one affordable housing, 100% affordable housing district, and we'll go through that specifically. There's a section over to the right-hand side of your computer screen, which I'm calling the east side of Rumson Road. There are overlay districts in this section. And then if you go all the way to the west side of the town, there's also an overlay district on that side. And then there are two inclusionary districts that you see right in the middle of the page. in the central area. So we're going to be going through, and I'll have blow-ups of each of these as we move through the different districts. So the first I want to talk about, and again, these are zoning districts that are applicable to the RDP, the realistic development potential, or that number of 51. The first is inclusionary zoning. And inclusionary zoning is a zoning district that provides an increase in density, which is also known as a compensatory benefit, so that there is an opportunity for affordable housing to be a part of the project. And it could either be on-site or off-site. The RR and the BA zoning districts, RR stands for Rumson Road and Bingham Avenue stands for Bingham Avenue. So Bingham Avenue, BA is here, RR is down here off of Rumson Road. These are inclusionary zoning districts that will be allowing duplexes, which in layman's terms are really single-family attached homes, triplexes, which are 3 single-family homes attached to one another, and carriage homes where there would be units over a garage. They range from, the densities range from 2.75 units per acre in the RR district to 3.5 units per acre in the BA district. As you can see here, there will be 16 total units permitted well, I would say not to exceed 16 market rate dwelling units in the RR district, and 18 not to exceed 18 market rate units in the BA district. The affordable housing component of this is not on site. It will be an off-site contribution through a payment in lieu, so funds as well as a dedication of land, which is known as Carton Street, which we'll talk about in the next slide. There are very specific architectural and buffering standards with individual plans and architectural elevations that are associated both with the BA and the RR district. One thing that's important to note, if I don't mention it throughout the presentation, if the existing ordinances, or excuse me, if the proposed ordinances don't have certain design regulations or stormwater management regulations in them, or parking regulations in them, that every zoning district that we're going to be covering tonight requires conformance with all borough stormwater management and other design requirements if it's not specifically identified in the individual ordinances. So that will be applicable throughout all the ordinances that I speak about tonight. The next zoning mechanism that's put into place to address the RDP is the 100% affordable housing zone, known as AH1. This is on Carton Street, and it sits kind of in the middle of your page right here. That's the AH1 zone. There's an existing building on that currently. And this is the Carton Street parcel that will be provided by the developer of the RR and the BA zoning districts as part of the payment in lieu to provide for affordable housing. And this zone is exactly what it states. It's 100% affordable housing. So all units within this zoning district will be affordable to low and moderate income households. This site is zoned for a new building that will contain 11 units, 10 of which will be family rental units, and 1 unit will have 5 bedrooms for folks that have special needs and need supportive services. Each unit within this building, as I indicated, will be for low and moderate income individuals and families. And we anticipate that the architectural and conceptual plan for this parcel, that process of designing it will begin early next year. So that takes care of the RDP as far as the zoning that's being proposed, and then the other program, the Market to Affordable program. Moving down to unmet need, that number of 552. It's really, again, this is the second subsection of the new construction obligation. While it's a large number, the borough is not required to meet this large number by the end of the compliance period, which ends in 2025. But the borough is required to implement several mechanisms that would provide incentives to produce affordable housing. So I broke it down into a couple of categories, but basically it's 3 different categories that the borough is proposing to meet the unmet need. First is zoning, known as overlay zoning, and we'll talk a bit about that in a second. The other is an accessory apartment program, and the last is development fees. The accessory apartment program is an existing program that the borough currently has on the books. This is an incentive program for folks to de-restrict their, let's say, accessory apartment over an accessory garage that would provide for affordable housing within the existing housing stock. For the ability to de-restrict the property, the borough provides significant subsidies in order for that to happen. So that's already existing on the books and has been for many years. The other piece of the unmet need mechanism is something known as the development fee ordinance. That is also currently on the books. It is being updated, but that is a development fee that's charged to regular development within the municipality. So if somebody is building a new house, there's a 1.5% fee on the assessed value of that house, and that goes into something known as the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That money is then used to help provide for affordable housing within the municipality. That development fee ordinance is also charged on non-residential projects at 2.5%, which is required across the state. So what exactly is overlay zoning? Overlay zoning is kind of what it sounds like. It is zoning that's placed on top of the existing zoning or the underlying zoning, or also known as the base zoning. But it's important to point out that the existing base zoning doesn't change. That zoning, if you're in an R4 zone, will remain as an R4 zone, and all of the benefits or regulations that you have from the R4 zones remain as is. It's also important to know that that an overlay zone is truly just an option, that there is a choice to now build. If you have an overlay zone on your property, you have a choice to either build under the base zoning, let's say it's R4, or as you could build in the overlay zoning regulations. You're not required to build under the overlay zoning. It's simply an incentive zoning that encourages affordable housing. And we're going to talk about some of those incentives as it relates to those individual pieces or those individual ordinances that are being adopted as part of the affordable housing plan. The first group of overlay zoning is what is known as the residential overlay inclusionary zoning. These zones occur over the residential 2, residential 4, and residential 5 base zoning districts. There are 3 small areas within the central downtown, and you can kind of see them. They are on the zoning map. They are usually shown in this effect where you'll see that there's a base color underneath, and then you have this effect of a fill that goes on top of it. So that's the ROI2. The ROI5 occurs here. This is Ridge Road. And then this is ROI4, and this is Avenue of Two Rivers coming up along here. So those are the main residential overlay inclusionary districts. These areas, the minimum lot size and the densities that are permitted in the ordinances reflect generally the lot characteristics of the underlying zoning. So for instance, the R2 zone has larger lots existing, and therefore a larger minimum lot size is required. So 3-acre minimum lot size, which basically means that if somebody chooses to utilize the overlay zoning and provide for a higher density of units, they would need 3 acres as a minimum to be able to do that. But the R2 has larger lots, and obviously therefore the minimum lot size is larger as compared to something like the R5 district that has smaller lot sizes and is more densely developed in a land use pattern than the R2 district. And that's why when you look at the ROI5 down towards the bottom of the screen here, where I have the incentives, there's a 1-acre minimum that's required to be able to build under this overlay zoning, and the unit density is higher than what would be allowed in the ROI2. So just as a summary, for ROI2, a 3-acre minimum is required. 3 dwelling units per acre is permitted. There are also several architectural and design regulations that are associated with each of these overlay districts. In the ROI 4 district, again, 1 acre minimum lot size, the density is a little bit higher than the ROI 2 at 8 dwelling units per acre. And then again, ROI 5 is permitted at 12 dwelling units per acre. The zoning district, overlay zoning district, known as mixed use and multifamily overlay, also short for MUMFO. This is actually, there is an existing overlay zone that is on the books today, and that particular overlay zone has been in place for several years. It's located mostly in the central business district. So this shot right here is the northern, what I call business district or downtown district, River Road running through it. And then this area here that you see is what I call the central business district, and you have Avenue of Two Rivers and Ridge Road coming into this space here, with River Road kind of coming down into the GB district. The intent of this particular overlay district was twofold. One, well, first it covers GB, POB, and NB based zoning districts. But the intent was really to not only expand it slightly, so you'll see a little bit of a crosshatch here. It's expanding into the R5 zone, as well as then also offering additional incentives or uses that would be permitted in the overlay zone. One is a mixed use, so you would be permitted to do retail or commercial on the bottom, and then on the upper floors, residential would be permitted. Again, we expanded that district to allow for that in other areas. We also indicated that there is a specific density that's permitted, 10 dwelling units per acre, but there are some architectural design regulations in order to build that type of density in this downtown district, really focusing on making sure that upper floors are in character with the surrounding community and the surrounding buildings. The other thing that was done in this particular district is that now multifamily residential is permitted as a principal use. So you could have a full building of residential uses within this district. So that's the overlay district known as MUMFO. And then the last set of overlay zoning districts is the faith institutional inclusionary overlay. This covers 3 specific properties, one in the R4 district, which is kind of in that north section of the downtown area. That's the First Presbyterian Church. The second and third are in the R1 district. And so this is down towards the bottom to the eastern side is the Holy Cross Church, and then B'nai Israel is all the way over to the west side. These are now overlay districts. So that, the church will continue to function as is, but there's an option in the future that if they choose to, or somebody else chooses to, they could come in and utilize the overlay zoning to produce affordable housing. The minimum lot size is 1 acre. For the First Presbyterian Church, which is up here in this R4 zone, 8 dwelling units per acre is permitted. A little bit denser because you're closer to the business district. And then out more into the R1 zone areas, it's 6 dwelling units per acre. Design regulations are part of this ordinance to ensure that adequate buffering, architectural design parameters are also put in there, so that it's really limited to triplexes and duplexes and that type of architectural product, not necessarily multifamily apartments, really trying to stay in the character of the surrounding community as much as possible. So that's the 3 sections of overlay districts. The mandatory set-aside ordinance that you see here that I didn't discuss yet is also a zoning technique, and this applies townwide for a developer that would propose 5 or more units. And it's normally through something like a use variance request that would go before the zoning board of adjustment. The mandatory set aside basically says that if you're building or proposing 5 or more residential units, you are automatically required to provide for affordable housing, and affordable housing set aside of 20% for the affordable housing units. So this was a brief summary of the borough's affordable housing plan to meet its RDP. I know that I didn't go through in very specific detail with the ordinance, but I wanted to give a brief overview kind of all the ordinances, the overall development, the overall affordable housing plan. And I wanted to then open it up to questions. However, before I get to that, I do want to make sure, again, everybody's aware, December 15th is the Borough Council meeting. What happens with these ordinances and the housing element at that point is that the borough is responsible to endorse the housing element and fair share plan that was adopted by the by the planning board last past Monday. There will be a public hearing for ordinances where they will hear and open it up for public comment and or questions. And then there was also an adoption of affordable housing resolutions. Once all of that is completed next week, we are scheduled for a court compliance hearing where the court and its master reviews our entire plan, all of the ordinances, all of the other mechanisms that are put into place, manuals and resolutions. And at that hearing, we provide our testimony, we provide our affordable housing plan, and then we receive approval from the court of the plan. Just real quick before we get to questions, once we receive what's known as a judgment of repose and compliance, that means that we've received an approval from the court indicating that our plan, that the Rumson Borough Affordable Housing Plan is compliant with COA rules and regulations, and that we have provided for our realistic opportunity for affordable housing to meet our obligation, and that covers us till 2025. And so this is, again, how to ask questions during the webinar. And so I'm going to, I think, send this off to Tom so he can let me know if we have any questions that I need to answer.
Great, thank you, Kendra. At this time, we will begin to answer the questions that have been submitted. We may group some questions that are similar in order to help us work through as many questions as we can this evening. As I said at the start of the presentation, as an attendee, you can submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. To ask a question, simply select the Q&A button to open the Q&A window. Please type your question into the Q&A dialog box and select send. Kendra, our first question is, do people in the moderate, low, and very low income area who are already living in Rumson count towards the 51 units? Is there
They do not.
Certified into court?
Oh, sorry. No, unfortunately, the way that the rules are put into place is that if there are existing low and moderate income families living in the borough, if there is not an affordability control or a deed restricting it for affordable housing in the future for 30 years, we do not get credit for that. The only time that we would get credit for the existing, for an existing unit that has low and moderate income families living in there is if we go through the rehab program. If they need rehabilitation to the unit, we get credit towards our rehab number.
Kendra, can you please describe the accessory apartment program in greater detail? And is there a deed restriction required? And can you pick the person who lives in your accessory apartment?
So the accessory apartment, again, is the goal behind it is to utilize existing housing stock, or at least within existing properties. So for instance, you have a garage, you have an apartment above, or you want to build a garage and put an apartment above and allow for and open it up for a low and moderate income family to live in it. A couple things happen. One is the borough provides a subsidy to provide for affordable housing, and that subsidy is based upon the income level. So the higher the subsidy you can provide for a low income family. The smaller the subsidy would be more of a moderate income family. There's a deed restriction for 10 years that it remain for affordable housing for low and moderate income families. And you cannot pick who is going into that unit. There is something called affirmative marketing and qualifications, and there is a list of people that if they want to be considered for affordable housing, go through income qualification and then get put on a list of folks, and there's a random selection if there's more than one person that's interested in that unit.
Kendra, can you define for us what a unit is? How many bedrooms is in a unit? If, for instance, if we have 10 one-bedroom units, is that the same as 10 multi-bedroom units? And what are the requirements?
Not quite sure of the question. Maybe I'll try to answer it. If I don't, maybe I can answer it at another time. But a unit is, so for instance, if you had a 10 unit, let's say on Carton Street, 10 units on Carton Street, family rental units, a percentage of them have to be one bedroom, a percentage of them have to be two, and a percentage of them have to be three. So no more than 20% can be one. You have to have a minimum of 20% to be three, and the rest can be two bedrooms. So there is what's called a bedroom distribution requirement within each of the projects, and really borough-wide. We have to make sure that all affordable housing, that when you pull them all together, that we're meeting that particular bedroom distribution.
Kendra, affordable housing 1 on the zoning map under affordable housing restricted deed in perpetuity, or is there a 10-year time limit like the accessory apartment program?
The affordability controls is a minimum of 30 years, and that's through a deed restriction.
The next question is, what are the plans for 61 South Ward? I can answer that question. The borough has purchased 61 South Ward as part of our affordable housing program. And we currently at this time do not have final plans on what that process will look, what that building will look like, but it will be a residential unit. The next question is, for the MUMFO, will the Community Reinvestment Act funding come into play?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, the MUMFO is an overlay zoning district, and so that's an option, not a requirement.
Regarding overlay zoning and our religious organizations, by the way, happy Hanukkah to the people who worship at B'nai Israel. Can a builder like Mr. Mumford come in and do what he did with Lauriston to those religious institutions?
So when we receive a judgment of compliance and repose, what that means is that our affordable housing plan has been approved by the court and holds a lot of weight if a builder were to come in and try to develop a piece of property that's not in accordance with the zoning. So what is permitted now within the FIIO zone is the base zoning that's there currently, whatever the base zoning permits. And now the overlay zones allow somebody to build at the densities. So for instance, with B'nai Israel, it's a 1 acre minimum lot size with 6 dwelling units per acre is what's permitted as the overlay, provided all the other requirements with the overlay zone are met.
Can you please talk about the Maplewood sites? The borough has purchased 2 sites on Maplewood, number 6 Maplewood and number 15 Maplewood. They both currently are already rentals, and that those sites will be either given to a nonprofit to then market, or they will be sold as market to affordable. The borough is still working on those plans, but they are the existing rentals that are some of the rentals that are on that street already, and they will be converted. If they are market to affordable, they were purchased at the market rate, and they will be sold as affordable. And somebody like Habitat for Humanity might partner with the borough in order to market those homes. The next question is, if we object to what is being proposed, what is the timing to do so?
There are 2 public comment areas where you can provide comments both to the Borough Council, which is next Tuesday. That is the public hearing on the ordinances, if you want to make a comment on the specific ordinances. And then, as I indicated, in February 9th, the court compliance hearing is scheduled. And at this point, I'm not sure exactly what the format is, but I'm assuming it's going to be a Zoom format. And the borough will definitely have information as to how you can participate and provide public comment at that level as well.
Kendra, do you expect the overlay zones that the town is proposing will satisfy the unmet need numbers of 552?
I don't know the answer to that question. It really is based on a lot of different factors. Economics, what is the economic future of the next 4 years? Willing sellers, willing developers. When we did the overlay zoning analysis and worked with Fair Share Housing on the settlement agreement, we started to kind of take a look at what, if this whole entire area was built out, what would the numbers look like? And it wasn't 552. I don't recall what the actual number was, but I don't anticipate that you would hit 552, at least not by 2025.
What does the cost of developing these affordable housing programs cost the actual taxpayers of the borough of Rumson? The state of New Jersey actually allows for the development of these affordable housing plans and designs to come from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which Kendra explained earlier, is a trust fund that is for all the new homes that are built. That 1.5% of each new home's assessed value is paid by the developer or the property owner, and it goes into a trust fund, and that's where the cost of the developing of these programs actually comes from. The overlay zones provide an opportunity to meet the unmet need, but are not mandatory from what I understand in the discussion. Do you have any idea of what will be mandatory in 2025? And if so, when do we understand, and when do we understand the new zoning areas that will be targeted in 2025 to meet this future requirement?
I don't know what's going to happen in 2025. We know that we are covered as far as having a judgment of compliance until 2025. There has been certainly some thoughts that by 2023, 2024, we will start understanding how they're going to first assign new obligations to municipalities, and then second, probably second, who's going to be reviewing that, the court or some state agency, and third, what is the process that we need to go through. I anticipate that as we get information from those that are making the decisions at the state level and at the court level, that we will certainly indicate that in the affordable housing page on the website, and then also make sure that we provide information sessions similar to this to the residents to let them know what the next steps are.
Kendra, can you confirm the specific changes to the NB Mumfo district? Is it just now that a 3-story mixed-use dwellings are now permitted instead of 2, and the multifamily housing is now permitted where it wasn't before?
Correct. That's the overlay. The Mumfo overlay district allows for those mechanisms to take place if the property owner so chooses.
Kendra, well, I know you talked about this briefly when we got started. Can you explain why this was mandated by the court, and how did it get started?
When you say this was mandated, meaning affordable housing?
Yes.
Or, to back up, there was, I won't belabor this, but there was a Mount Laurel case that started this, that basically said that if you have exclusionary zoning, meaning you have all single family zoning for single family homes only, that you are excluding low and moderate income families, and that's known as the Mount Laurel doctrine. And I certainly can go through this in more detail at some other point, but basically what that means is that every municipality in the state of New Jersey has the obligation to provide for a realistic opportunity for affordable housing. And the way that that was really put forth is that you are to adopt affordable housing plan known as the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan, and then the zoning that would then implement that plan to meet your obligation. There's a Fair Housing Act that has a lot of regulations that we are to also abide by, but it really is a constitutional obligation from the state that requires municipalities to address their obligation.
Kendra, we talked about income levels and requirements to be eligible for low-income housing. Can you tell us if elderly members of a family count towards low-income housing? So if it's a Rumson family and there's elderly family members, could they count towards low-income housing?
Yes, if they are part of your household, when they do the income qualification, all folks within the household above 18 years of age are included in the income review.
Can you also explain if we will end up with a tall apartment building in Rumson filled with affordable housing?
No, your overlays districts, as well as your inclusionary districts, as well as your 100% affordable housing district, have a maximum height of, at least in the Mumfo district, of 3 stories, of which the 3rd story is really set back and is a smaller percentage of the 2nd story. So that would be the highest level of height of a building.
Kendra, what is the anticipated impact of 51 units of housing on our schools and our infrastructure in the borough?
I haven't done a detailed analysis of that. I think we talked about this in early January, but it's minimal. I think one of the things you have to remember is the 51 number, that number of 51 includes 13 rental bonuses, which I call paper credits. You get a rental bonus for each family rental that you provide. So you're only really providing 38 units. Of those 38 units, 5 are existing within the municipality, and of the remainder, 10 of those units are supportive and special needs, which really don't have children that go into the school system.
Kendra, have any property owners that are currently own property in the GB, NB, or POB considered changing and using the overlay zoning to change their businesses to residences? And
Tom,
I can say
it.
that there are none that I know of.
Okay.
Can you describe the 2025 assessment process and what will be expected at the time that, assuming the town meets its current RDP, what will happen in 2025 going forward?
Yeah, as I indicated, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could answer that question, but the only thing I can tell you is that as we find out, we will make sure the town folks find out.
If I own a property in a GB zone, what is the incentive for me to add a 2nd floor and consider adding affordable housing?
So the incentive, what's also known as the compensatory benefit, is the ability to go up an additional story, and also provide for, I think it's really in this particular case, really going up an extra story to be able to get to a density that would be able to allow for a set aside of affordable housing.
I want to try to get to all the questions, so a number of them are all the same. So I'm going to try to jump to a few other ones that are a little different. In the RR zone, why is Mr. Mumford's development proposal permitting housing to be put into wetlands?
So as far as the borough and I know is that there has always been wetlands shown on the property in the concept plans. My understanding is that the New Jersey DEP has issued an LOI, which is a letter of interpretation that maps the wetlands, and the developer of that property, as they go through the site plan process, will have to show how they're addressing the wetlands, and that is really the purview of the planning board when they review it. And then, of course, they have to follow all DEP regulations.
Is this entire overlay zone an incentive for anyone who wants to buy a property or existingly or already owns a property to build and develop affordable housing? If therefore no one sells their property or no one decides to do it, then everything stays status quo.
Correct.
Can you better explain the payment in lieu program that occurred for the Rumson Road and Bingham Avenue projects?
Sure. So when the inclusionary zoning allowed for an increase in density on those two properties, there was a required set aside of affordable housing units. So for the total of units that were being proposed on Rumson Road and Bingham Avenue, set aside of 9 units would have been required between those two sites. Those 9 affordable housing units were valued at $350,000. I think it was $350,000. Tom, tell me if I'm wrong on that. And that amount of money then is being paid to the borough to produce those units on Carton Street. So it's a combination of a cash payment in lieu of providing affordable housing on Rumson Road and Bingham Avenue, as well as a dedication or a donation of the Carton Street property at a value that would equal $350,000 times 9 units.
Kendra, can you explain the minimum acreage requirements on all these overlay zones? For example, in an R5 zone, if 1 acre is the minimum and some properties are under an acre, how does the overlay benefit the borough?
There would have to be a addition. The properties, if they're less than an acre, there would have to be a combination of properties in order to meet the minimum lot size. So until somebody were to pull together several properties, if they're all undersized to meet a 1 acre, then the overlay zoning couldn't be complied with.
Would neighbors be notified before a transition from a church or business to an affordable housing process, as in the IIO zones? Would a church property have to sell or transition? And would the neighbors be notified of such a transition?
So normally in site plan application, noticing within 200 feet is a requirement. I don't know the complete details of it, but my understanding is that if a site plan application is coming in and has to have development approval through the planning board or zoning board of adjustment, everybody within 200 feet of the property line would be noticed.
Kendra, how are affordable housing families selected for units? So for example, if as a business owner, I wanted to add an affordable housing unit above my business, how does one select people to live in those units?
So there is a process. There is an administrative agent that is hired by the municipality. Their responsibility is to affirmatively market all units within the borough. They put it out to the region, so that includes Monmouth, Ocean, and Mercer counties. That's your region. In that region, they would put out, here's a unit that's available within Rumson. There's a list that somebody can then apply to and say, I would like to be considered. They go through an income qualification process. If they are qualified to meet the income limits as a low, very low or moderate income family, they are placed on a list. They are allowed to go see the unit when it is ready. And then if there's more than one person that is interested in that unit, there is a date where there would be a random drawing and a name is picked out of the drawing, and then that person would have the ability to apply for that with the landlord. The landlord still has control over a credit check and a background check of that particular applicant.
Can you go back and review the ROI4 plan on Avenue of Two Rivers? And can you discuss that it's 8 units per acre and explain what that means?
So the minimum lot size on the ROI4 is 1 acre. So on a 1 acre lot, you would be permitted 8 total units. That's 8 units per acre, of which 20% would have to be set aside for affordable housing and deed restricted for affordable housing.
Can the borough restrict affordable housing to only senior citizens so that it does not impact our schools?
There is a maximum 25% of your obligation that you can restrict for seniors. You cannot zone for age restricted housing that would address all of your obligation, only 25% max.
What is the estimated impact regarding taxes with the adoption of this affordable housing plan to the residents of the borough?
As indicated, the development fees that come from the development of houses as well as non-residential properties in the borough have funded your existing trust fund. It will continue to fund future trust fund or funds that would go into the trust fund, and then that money is then utilized for affordable housing. It is unlikely that that any impact on taxpayers would result from affordable housing.
In the Market to Affordable program, where an affordable property owner buys a household in Rumson, does that affordable property owner, does he still pay taxes to the borough of Rumson and pay
Yes.
taxes to the schools?
Yes.
How many people can occupy a 2-bedroom unit?
You can have 3 people. There are certain requirements so you could have a husband, wife, and a child, but you couldn't have, and it gets into a lot of details, but typically 3 is allowed in a 2-bedroom.
How does the proposed increased density in the overlay zones compare to other towns that have their plans certified by Fair Share Housing Association?
With regards to overlay zones, they're very similar. Just to kind of follow up, the presumptive, what's called the presumptive density, 6 units per acre, is the minimum density that would create affordable housing. 8 units an acre, 10 units an acre, 12 units an acre, a little bit higher, but those are usually associated with more of the patterns that you see in the downtown where you have the smaller lot sizes. That's the type of density that would most likely you would see in overlay districts in that kind of land use pattern.
As a resident of the borough of Rumson, how do I get involved and help with the affordable housing program in the borough of Rumson? I can answer that, Kendra. The borough is setting up an affordable housing committee. You can apply to that committee by sending an email to the mayor at mayor@rumsonnj.gov. And the mayor will collect the names and will basically set up a committee going forward to help assist the borough in marketing these programs to the different property owners throughout the borough. Of the 51 RDP, how many units will be to satisfy the town's approval of the Mumford plans on Rumson Road and on Bingham Avenue? What is the variance?
There will be 9 that come from the Rumson Road and Bingham Avenue property, of which those will be in the Carton Street project. And that Carton Street project gets the 10 family rental units get bonus credits. So you're getting a 2-for-1 bonus credit, 2-for-1 credits on that. So there's actually, just FY, just so everybody understands, there's 10 family rental units. There's 5 special needs, supportive needs bedrooms. You get a credit per bedroom. So your total credits that you're getting from the actual units on that site are 15, but you're getting additional rental bonuses of 10. So for 15 unit credit, you're getting 25 total credits on that property.
Given COVID-19 and given the fact that multi-generations are now living together in single family zones, what is the flexibility to take an elderly member of the family in and have that count towards the borough's affordable housing obligation?
So as I explained previously, there's affirmative marketing requirements, income eligibility requirements, and then of course, when we talk about affirmative marketing and picking the folks that would be eligible for these, it's a random selection. You can't specifically say, I want this particular person within this unit.
How do you plan to keep the integrity of the business district if you remove the restrictions to keep businesses in town by permitting 100% housing where there is currently businesses?
So as I indicated earlier, the overlay zone is an option. It's an option of the owner of the property, whether they want to continue their business as is, or whatever the base zoning permits, or the overlay district would be also an incentive if they wanted to take that. But there is a requirement that there be a set aside for affordable housing.
Can you please define what the timeline for ordinances is in the borough? And I can handle that, Kendra.
Sure.
The ordinances are developed working with myself, Kendra, and other experts that the borough has, along with the council and the committee that has worked on affordable housing thus far. The ordinances are introduced at a council meeting. Most of the ordinances we're talking about tonight were introduced in November. They were published in the paper. They were posted on our website. Anybody within the zone that's in question or within 200 feet of the zone that's in question was sent a letter to invite them either to this meeting or to the public meeting next Tuesday that the council will have at 4:30. The information is up on our website for anybody to review and to read the full writings of all the different ordinances. And once the ordinance also went to the planning board to be approved as part of the the housing element and fair share plan. Now that it's received the planning board's approval, it will then go before the council again on Tuesday next week, and the council will then vote for its adoption if it chooses. Can you give us some more insight on the long-term impact to taxpayers regarding and maintaining the affordable housing plan, Rumson's infrastructure, roads, parking, park size, maintenance, garbage collection, and school size, for example, when these have these costs been considered either by the borough or by the state?
As I indicated, the impact from affordable housing, the construction of it, the different programs that we mentioned comes from the trust fund. As these folks come into the community, again, that we're looking at 33 households that would be coming into the borough over, let's say, the next 5 years. We have not done a community impact analysis on that. I suspect it's pretty minimal given the existing population and the contribution from 33 families, of which 10 will be individuals.
Can you tell us a little bit about what general businesses you think might remain under this plan? I always thought that residential was allowed above businesses. Is that different now? And also, do we expect to attract more businesses with residential above, given this opportunity that you're now creating?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know really what the future holds as far as the economic outlook for businesses, mixed use businesses, but it's an option for somebody to allow for commercial to continue on the first floor, and then second and third floor residential. Yes, mixed use is currently allowed. However, we're adding an additional story to help with the density requirement and set aside for affordable housing.
How does one know if a retiree with no income would qualify for low income for affordable housing as referenced here? And how does one apply for low income housing that's been referenced here?
So we, as I indicated, the administrative agent has been hired by the borough. There will be, once we get through the judgment of compliance, there will be manuals that will be adopted, put up on the webpage. There is a lot of information that will be out there to guide everybody through how you apply for affordable housing in the borough or for the region.
How much has been spent on analyzing affordable housing? How much has Rumson spent on analyzing the impact to the existing property owners? And it seems like we've gone to great lengths to create a housing with little effort to understand the impact to the current residents. Does the state mandate this of all communities or just the borough of Rumson?
I'll take the last question first, and that's yes, the state is a constitutional obligation that all municipalities provide for their fair share of affordable housing to meet their obligation. I forgot the first two, Tom. What were they again?
How much has the borough spent on analyzing affordable housing and its impact on the residents?
So there will be a spending plan that will be a part of the fair share plan that the borough council will endorse next Tuesday. That information will be out there. It gives how much has been spent. I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but it gives all that, all the answers to that particular question as far as how much has been spent since the inception of the trust fund, and then also what's projected to be spent as we move into the next couple of years. As I indicated, the impact on taxpayers, it's an affordable housing trust fund for the construction of affordable housing. I think that an additional 20 to 30 families in the municipality would have a minimum impact on any kind of community tax burden.
Kendra, you stated that existing zoning stays in place for things that are not listed in the current affordable housing overlays. Will there be a minimum on on-site parking requirement for overlay zones to align with the current zoning and also based on the number of units per acre?
Yes, if the individual overlay zone does not address required parking, it automatically reverts to the parking requirements that the town has in existence currently.
If someone lives in a property adjacent to an overlay zone, can they apply to the zoning board for inclusion in the affordable housing program and in the overlay zone?
So that would not be you can do it one of two ways. One, you could come in and ask for a use variance to provide for a higher density with a set aside. And as I indicated, you would be under the mandatory set aside requirement ordinance. The other way that you would do that is you would have to change zoning and add your property to an overlay zone, similar to the process that we're going through tonight. Or sorry, not tonight, but the process for the ordinances with the introduction of changing the zone map to include your property into a overlay zone.
When affordable housing is developed and also other properties are developed in the borough, does the borough consider the traffic that basically is dumped out onto the local roads? Will the county consider the traffic, and will egress and fire equipment and first aid equipment be considered when these developments are built?
Yes, so part of your site plan application for the inclusionary development and the 100% affordable housing project is a site plan application to the planning board, and then the planning board, under their jurisdiction and their review, would require what they believe is necessary in order to make their decisions on the application.
Does a property owner, such as a church, have the right to sell off a small portion of its property and use it for affordable housing, or would it have to sell the entire property, or is there an acre minimum for the affordable housing overlay to kick in?
It's the acre minimum. They would have to meet all of the bulk requirements and all of the design requirements in order to subdivide off a piece of the property. By
being next to an overlay zone, and should the overlay zone become active and something to be developed next to you, is that taken into account on the assessed value of my property?
So I'm not an assessor, so I can't answer the question, but there wouldn't necessarily be an assessment of, well, I'll just put it this way. I'm not an expert, I'm not an assessor. I do know that there is lots of data out there that market rate housing or inclusionary housing that includes set aside which is what overlays are. They're inclusionary housing, have been shown across the board that values do not decrease. I'm not an expert, I will say that again, but I certainly can get that information if somebody would like to see what that is, or I'm sure that the town's tax assessor can talk to that as well.
Can you explain who the administrative agent is, how they're paid, and how they choose property owners to live in affordable housing?
The administrative agent is Community Grants, Housing, and Planning. They are a organization that provides expert service, that is administrative agent service, affirmative marketing, income qualifications, deed restrictions, and just monitoring of the affordable housing units. They are paid through the trust fund. There is a 20% max of the trust fund that can go to administrative items, and they are one of the items that can be paid through the trust fund. Developers also pay the administrative agent, so that's also a way that they would be paid. And the process that they go through, as I mentioned earlier, is affirmative marketing on the region-wide basis, accepting applications, qualifying those folks to make sure that they would meet the income limitations, and then doing a random selection for the units when they become available, and then placing them, or at least submitting them to the landlord or developer of the project.
Kendra, years ago, borough employees lived in the borough. If I was to build a unit above one of my current buildings and rent it at a low income rate to a borough employee, would that help meet the borough's affordable housing process? Or does the state or the administrative agent have to decide who lives there?
Yeah, as I indicated, they would have to go through the same process as other folks that would be interested in that, in applying for affordable housing within the borough of Rumson. So same affirmative marketing, income qualification, random drawing, but it certainly is, borough employees, just like anybody else within the region, have every right to apply for affordable housing in the borough, but it is a random selection.
Isn't this affordable housing Section 8 housing that's subsidized by the government? Do affordable housing renters have the same rights and restrictions as rental agreements as non-affordable housing renters? For example, can they be evicted for non-compliance by the owner, or if the renter was not to fulfill their rental agreement obligations?
This is not Section 8 housing. This is affordable housing in accordance with the Fair Housing Act, as well as COA rules and regulations and the HMFA. All the same rental rules would apply. If somebody is not paying their rent, then you would be able to have all the legal mechanisms afforded to you as if it was any other renter.
If a business was to add a unit above on the second floor or 2 units, can one of the units be market rate and can the other be affordable rate? And how long does the deed restriction remain in place for that unit?
Yes, one could be market, one could be affordable, and the deed restriction on the affordable is 30 years.
Kendra, by market rate, what does that mean?
Market rate is, if you remember that screen that I had previously, where there was a range of I can just go back to it. There's a range of prices. Anything that is above the highest price is considered market rate. So let me just get there. So for instance, if you're selling a house for a 2-bedroom, anything over, and these are just general numbers, again, they're not actual specific ones, they're more illustrative, but anything over $264,000 would be considered market rate.
Kendra, this plan that you've identified for the 51 units, when was it first determined and published? It sounds like one developer may have brought up all this new development. Did other parties compete for any of the land? And how did Fair Share Housing Center come up with the number of units that we have to basically comply to?
Let me talk about the obligation first. So the obligation actually came out of a court case in Mercer County, which is Judge Jacobson. The numbers were spent many months going over the numbers and the obligations for specifically a couple of towns there. They took those numbers and they basically brought them, and that same mechanisms or that same methodology applied it to the rest of the municipalities throughout the state, and those numbers were issued. Most of the numbers pretty much have been accepted by most municipalities because to fight over the obligation cost a lot of money and a lot of time. So those numbers were taken from a specific methodology by several different experts during that particular trial. So a number is then given. A lot of it's based upon census data and very complicated methodologies. So that obligation is assigned to the municipality. The 51 RDP number, which is the kind of the real number that we have to achieve by 2025, was not negotiated. It was looked at through what's called a vacant land analysis. Then that's attached to the housing element, so anybody can take a look at that vacant land analysis, which was prepared by me and then reviewed by the court and approved by the court. And we looked at the vacant land within the municipality at the time of the analysis, which has at this point it's probably been about 2 years now, and applying certain densities, 6 units per acre, and up to certain parcels. Outcomes, here's what we think the realistic development potential is for affordable housing based upon these densities applied to those vacant properties. While those vacant properties aren't necessarily part of the plan, they are really just the mechanism that shows here's what the capacity that the town that the town could use. I'm sorry, that the town could provide for affordable housing. So that's where the 51 number. Did I miss a question, Tom?
I think you got it.
Okay.
Kendra, thank you for all your details. Can you please share what other municipalities you work with and what you do for a living? Do you feel Rumson, what Rumson is proposing is in line with all your other clients?
50% of I'm a land use planner. I'm a professional planner in the state of New Jersey and a landscape architect. And 50% of what I do on a weekly basis is affordable housing for municipalities throughout the state. I'm also a master assigned by the court to review other municipalities' plans and report to the court with regards to compliance. So I work in the affordable housing realm much of my time. When I look at Rumson's affordable housing plan for the number of units, which I know seems like a lot for Rumson, for the people that live in Rumson, but when you compare it to some towns that have an obligation of 1,250 units, this particular plan has been extremely comprehensive. I will say it's one of the most comprehensive affordable housing plans that I've worked on in my career, where almost every mechanism that's available to us through rules and regulations from COA is being utilized, that we are implementing overlay ordinances and mechanisms that go towards an unmet need number, certainly very much more comprehensive than I've seen in some towns. So this is a complex but also comprehensive plan that includes many mechanisms, and in my opinion will provide for a realistic opportunity for affordable housing, and affordable housing more so in a smart growth manner, as I indicated, really trying to concentrate it in areas where folks can utilize walking to services and retail and parks and schools and transportation, which is where it really needs to be.
Kendra, if you sell your house in a new overlay zone, if I have a residential property, I live in the property, it's in an overlay zone. If I was to sell my home, does it automatically change to affordable housing?
No.
Why not?
the base zoning stays as is. So if you have a single family home, you want to sell your single family home, you can continue to do that. And somebody can come and buy your single family home and live in it without having to do anything. As I indicated, the overlay zones are optional. You do not have to take advantage of them.
Some of the numbers you've explained are confusing. Can you give us the actual net number of units we are going to have to produce before 2025, and how many people you estimate that may include?
So you will have 33 new units, of which 23 will be family rental units, because 10 are supportive and special needs. So that's one person each. So those are 10 people. Of the 23 units, as I said, 20% cannot go over 1 bedrooms. You have to have a minimum of 20% 3 bedrooms, and the rest are 2 bedrooms. So I can't tell you how many actual individuals will be within each unit, but there will be 23 units that have to meet that bedroom distribution.
Can you explain to us if there is a property that's currently for sale or vacant in the MUMFO zone? How does that become affordable housing? Will it become affordable housing? And will it be redeveloped? So if a property, I can answer that. So if a property is currently for sale in the borough as a commercial property, it's up to whoever buys that property to decide whether or not they want to keep it in its current use. The borough's ordinances actually regulate what can and can't be done on a commercial piece of property. What the overlay ordinance does is it allows that property owner to consider perhaps having commercial, office or a real estate office, or a restaurant on the first floor. And now we allow the second and second or possibly 2.5 story, which would be like a 3rd story, to be residential, where in the past we did not allow that. Now there are some properties in the community, Cups and Cakes, that has residential above it. That property was grandfathered in prior to some of the ordinance changes. But one of the things that we're doing in the commercial zones is we're allowing property owners to go back to having affordable housing or having apartment units above their commercial businesses on the lower level. So I hope that answers that question. What are other towns in New Jersey doing compared to what Rumson is doing?
Well, it depends on the town. If it's another vacant land town, similar mechanisms. Each town is different, different set of circumstances. Inclusionary zoning is usually a part of most municipalities' plans. 100% affordable housing is typically part of it, not always. Market to affordable in a vacant land town and accessory apartments is pretty common because you're trying to use existing housing stock as much as possible because you don't have the vacant land. So I would say the mechanisms that the borough is currently using as compared to other vacant land towns is pretty comparable.
So compared to other vacant land towns, what Rumson is producing and developing and using as mechanisms to create affordable housing are very comparable to those other towns?
Yes, yeah. I overlap between the mechanisms of overlay zoning, inclusionary zoning to some degree, not always. Affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, again, not always. Market to affordable and accessory apartments are pretty common when you see that in a vacant land town. I will say that with the borough, your overlay zones are cover an area and are very detailed. So I would say that's a little bit more than other municipalities.
Thanks, Kendra. At this time, I think we'll wrap it up. We've answered approximately 80 questions. I did try to group some of the questions together. There were some specific questions about specific properties. a broad sense, but specifically about a specific property, we'd be happy to answer those directly with you. If you think of any other questions, please feel free to email us or call Borough Hall, and we'd be happy to help you. A link to the affordable housing webpage can be found at the top of the borough's homepage at rumsonnj.gov. If you know of anyone who could not attend this evening, please recommend this webinar to them. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Kendra, for doing a great job. Happy holidays, and please stay safe.